Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Perry.
Hey, listen. First, I want to thank you and Water Street for giving me the opportunity to share my background and talk about my artwork. I'm really excited about that. Looking forward to it. Um, really excited about being part of the artist collective at Water Street. Being a part of that community, it means a great deal to me, and I'm looking forward to a long, long relationship.
Wonderful.
Um, let me tell you a little bit about my background.
Mhm.
I've always been a two-dimensional artist. That is to say, from a very early age, I always enjoyed painting and drawing. When I was very young, it could have, cartoons, Mr. Potato Head, if I'm dating myself, but very much a two-dimensional type artist. Did some painting all the way up through, quite frankly, my early 20s.
Mhm.
Drawing, sketching, painting mostly. So I've always kind of had that drive and that knack. So if I wasn't going to school or wasn't working, that's what I was doing as far as the art was concerned.
Okay.
Until about my mid 20s, I picked up a camera and became really enamored with it, um, in the ability for it to capture images quickly and to be able to tell a story. So I really wanted to work with a camera a great deal going forward. So much to the extent that my painting and my sketching, although I still do that and play with it, photography using a camera became a central part of my life.
Mhm.
So since my mid 20s, I've always had a camera. Very first one that I picked up was a Minolta camera, an SRT 101.
Mhm.
It was a film camera. Worked mostly in black and white. Took color, but it was processed, outside of my dark room. But if it was black and white, I played around with processing of the film on my own, and really enjoyed that entire creative process. Today, the cameras that I'm using are high resolution digital cameras. So
Mhm.
I've moved away from the film cameras, and again working digitally today.
So
Uh,
just
yeah.
just to interject for a second here. So,
hmm
where were you living? Where you were taking, photos and what sort of images inspired you and where did that all start?
Great question. Great question. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I was raised. Born in North Carolina. Spent about 6 months there.
Okay.
Parents left there and went to New Jersey, which is where I spent there up until my early 20s in Newark. So
Okay.
it's a heavily urban environment. Newark, New Jersey is a short 20-minute bus ride outside of New York City.
All right.
So that's where I grew up. So the images that I captured mostly had a urban kind of a background to it, from the
Mm-hmm.
people to the building to the textures of the city.
Mm-hmm.
To this very day, that's where a lot of my work is focused. Not exclusively,
Mm-hmm.
but growing up in Newark in that heavily urban environment,
Mm-hmm.
those are the kind of pictures that I drew early on, and it continued right into my photographic experiences and captures. So,
Sure, sure. So do you think
yeah,
that working in black and white really lent to that sort of imagery, where because you were working with urban landscapes, and so that, the black and white, that was the conscious choice, it just it was more powerful that way, or what was the decision making there?
yeah. Quite frankly, black and white is it's an easier process to learn. I mean, from the
Mhm.
from the very start, as opposed to jumping right into color. So
Mhm.
that was one aspect of it. It was trying to follow the learning curve associated with film, and black and white was a natural beginning point.
Mhm.
But as I did that more and more, I began to focus mostly on the black and white because I like the kind of story that I could tell. Right, you've got that kind of stripped out aspect that you're pulling something away from color, and it allows you to see black and white in a very different kind of a way.
Mhm.
Um, and even today, there are some images that I like to create in black and white, There are other ones that I prefer to process them and present them in color because I think it tells a very, very different story. But back to your point though, yeah. So you had that learning curve issue, and then I actually began to love black and white as I moved forward. So most of what I took was that it was stark. And if you want to tell sort of a gritty story, sometimes black and white lends itself to that a great deal. And being in an urban environment, you find a lot of gritty type environment, lots of texture heavy environments and subjects to work with. So it was pretty much a natural fit. And I just began to understand the kind of value that black and white or monochrome images had then, and that approach still continues today in a lot of my work. In fact, most of what I produce today is going to be in black and white. But again, I just I look at it, I do an analysis, I do an assessment. How do I feel about it? You know, what kind of story am I trying to get out of it? And then I decide whether black and white or whether color is the best way to present the image.
So so let's go back to the stories. So what type of stories are you most interested in sharing through your photography?
So that's another great question. What I'm looking for mostly is looking for images that tell a story. So that if I'm taking photographs of people out in an environment, whether it's in the city or whether it's in the country, and you've got groups of people, what I'm looking for is trying to figure out a way to capture an image that represents the heart of what kind of energy is taking place at that point. So, for example, if I see people engaged in conversation, I'm interested in watching their hands and how they use that to communicate when they talk to each other. I'm interested in seeing how people shake hands or how they exchange things as they're engaged in conversation. So the kind of story that I'm trying to tell in that regard are the interactions that are taking place between people and how I can best capture that. You know, does it say something to me about what's going on? And hopefully it'll say something to somebody else about what's going on. But first I'm trying to see, well, does it say anything to me about the interaction that I'm watching? So, and it could be people who are not particularly engaged with one another. It's just out in an environment and watching how people are reacting to each other about what's going on. Whether it's someone at a parade who's looking at what's happening, or that one group of people looking at another group of people and what sort of story might be going on in that particular case. So I'm looking just to try and see if there's some, and sometimes this happens very quickly, not always, but sometimes it's very, very quick. It's like in that photojournalistic type mode where you're out with your camera and you're in the world and you're looking, you're just observing, and all of a sudden something's taking place that's happening, and you know, it can be over in a split second. So you're trying to just be as aware as you can and capturing it. Sometimes it's gone just that quick and you don't get it, but you're trying to make sure you've got sort of a heightened awareness, right? So that you can pick up that. And that's what I do on the one hand. So if I'm doing that kind of photojournalistic type of approach, Rebecca, that's kind of what I try and do, heighten up my awareness. Now, on the other hand, I like to create images. So I should say at this point that although the tag that I use is photographer, but on the other hand, what I think of myself as doing is actually being an image maker, and my tool of choice to do that is a camera, because I'm trying to, on the one hand, do a photojournalistic, taking out, trying to capture the action that's taking place. But if I see something in which I'm staging a type of an image, right, there's something that comes to mind that I want to project an image that I see, and I have to stage it, right, and then shoot it. So I'll do it that way too. So again, it's a matter of looking at whether there's a story there.
Sure. So do you have an example of the first type of work, you know, where you're capturing in that photojournalistic fashion? Do you have anything behind you that you can show an example of or a reference? I know you sent me a bunch of images, and if not, we can lay that in later too and show the audience.
Well, we do. There's one that I sent that's called Love and Wisdom, for example. It's one of the photos that I sent. And
great.
I'll tell you, I'm gonna disconnect this earplug.
Okay.
All right. So that, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, fantastic. I think that'll probably be easier.
Yeah.
So what were you saying about the
Yeah, so you talked about you talked about the more photojournalistic spontaneous shots, where you're uh, capturing people engaging in conversation. It's that quick, snapshot that just captures,
Mhm.
a moment in a split second. And then the other one that, you just referenced was when it's staged. So what I'm interested in is, showing an example of each of those types of work.
Excellent. Okay, so do you want me to just grab one off the wall?
Sure. Yeah. And then, the audience won't be able to see things super clearly, but you having it in your hand and talking about it sometimes is helpful too. And then with the images that you sent me, then we can edit them in too, so they know what we're talking about. Perfect.
So this photograph
Uh-huh.
is one that's called Love and Wisdom.
Right.
This would be an example of that photojournalistic type approach where
Mhm.
I was actually on the south side of Chicago on a Sunday morning,
Okay.
and church was emptying out. Now, I wasn't looking for this photo particularly. I was actually looking at some other type items that I wanted to photograph.
Okay.
But I noticed these two older women coming down the street. I noticed the way that they were walking together and how close and the kindness, and that presented a really powerful story to me. So
Mhm.
as they actually went past me, right, I snapped this photograph and called it Love and Wisdom. So
Nice.
this would be an example of one that happened on the spur of the moment, right? That photojournalism kind of approach, just being ready and open
Mm-hmm.
to be one that tells a great story.
Great. Okay.
So did you want to talk about also a one that, for example, that was staged, for
I
example?
I think that'd be great.
So if we were looking at a photograph that, for example, this one, which is called Taylor's Dream.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this will speak to two things. One, I just showed you the photograph that is in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
This one is in color.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, this is a photograph that happened. It was another one that I wasn't looking for at the time, but I happened to turn a light out and didn't turn another one out. And while I was correcting that, I turned around and saw
Yeah.
this image, and it sort of presented itself. Now, I didn't see it exactly like this, but I saw in a very split second that there was something there. And the more I looked at it, I finally figured out what it was I was looking at, and even came up with a name for it. That name of Taylor's Dream grew fairly quickly out of this image.
Okay.
So I actually staged it
Okay.
and image that way. So
Okay, so for your staged images, do you work in series, or is it just, you set it up and you capture one image and you feel like you've gotten everything that you want to say from that image, or do you take multiple photographs and have different variations of the same theme?
well, in fact, it depends on the subject. I will shoot various photographs.
Mm-hmm.
There's one. So here's another photograph that is that's staged, and I call this photograph American Steed.
Mm-hmm.
Now this one is in color. This is sort of an ongoing process because what I'm going to be doing is this is the first in a series, or um, at least conceptually,
Mm-hmm.
first in a series of images that I want to take that are very similar, that are like this.
Okay.
And forward, they may be in black and white, may continue to be in color.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this would be one, for example, that is not. It's a standalone by itself, but it really represents a starting point for me.
Okay.
I'll be taking other bikes, for example, and trying to kind of wrap the concept of taking the current technology and older technology, mostly relative to Western paraphernalia,
Mm-hmm.
right, and creating images similar to this one. So
Okay.
this one is a work in progress, although it's a, I don't know, prototype, artist proof, if you will.
Sure.
Mhm.
Okay. Very cool. Okay, so we've talked so far about two different types of, well, it's really process, and different approaches that you've taken. So we've talked about the photojournalistic spontaneity, spontaneous approach, where images just present themselves, and then we've also talked about more staged, more based on, on a conceptual idea that you develop over time.
Mhm.
So is there any other ways that you work, or is there another thing that you want to talk about that one of the examples you sent me about, I think 8 or 9 images. So you're pretty prolific, as if I understand correctly. So you've got a lot of different types of work.
Yeah, I don't try and force it, but I just try and just do the work as I see it. I try and capture it. So to your point, like the piece that's behind you, for example, is an example of an ongoing project that I have. That piece is one of today 25 different unique images that are taken in this series that I'm working on.
Okay.
So it is a work in progress, right? These are not staged. There's a lot that I could say about them, but I can tell you that this is not a staged photograph. The series that I'm working on is not a staged series, but it is an ongoing project. It's more conceptual than anything. I mean, it's very different than what you would call a photojournalist type photograph.
Sure.
Or it's something that is, yes.
Let me just back up for just a second, and then I would love to hear more about this concept and this ongoing process. So this is current work in progress, and this is also on display at our Dempsey Family Gallery at Water Street Studios, the current exhibition, which is the several of the artists, not all of them, but several of the artists from the Water Street Studios Artist Collective. So this is, tell me more about, the image, tell me more about the concept, the ongoing process, how you developed this idea. I'll let you go from there.
This particular series that I'm working on, that this piece would represent, is one that began years ago. And it began with today, something that's somewhat unrelated to the piece, but it's grown from that starting point into this, and it's continuing on. This piece is actually sort of it's a transitional piece for me in this series, because in this series I am exploring these graphic images that I'm finding in the environment. For example, there's the name of this particular piece and the name of every other piece in the series is exactly the same, except for an identifying number at the very end. There's a 4-digit number. The name of this piece and all the pieces is Artist Conversion of Found Communications Within the Environment.
Okay.
And they're all followed by a 4-digit number.
Okay.
Like, for example, this one would be Artist Conversion of Found Communication Within the Environment, number 5,000.
Okay.
This piece. All that represents is a way for me to identify the difference between that piece and another one in that series. So it's really an indexing function.
So you talked about, you mentioned that this is a different approach from previous work. So this is it's on canvas, correct? Or is that no?
It's what's called an image block. It's actually an image that is printed on a metallic paper and adhered to a wood platform.
Got it.
And it's technically referred to as an image block by the company that actually produces. I don't make them myself. I actually take the image and then I send it out to a third party to create this particular one for me.
So
particular series.
Okay, so you photographed this, and this is an actual image, or did you did you manipulate it with software, or is it this an actual image of something that you've seen in real life? Okay.
This is actually something that I've seen in real life in this sense. What this is a compilation of several images, right, from images that I have gathered, right, or to support the effort of this series, right. It is unique, but this one has been combined. It is a compilation of several images to create this particular image. Now, the other images within the series are standalone. They are not compilations, right? They have not been combined. It is simply raw capturing of the images. I see it, and then from there, what I'm doing is I just take a step back and explain that my photography is a digital photography. It is based in the digital world, which means I am using product software like Photoshop and Lightroom. However, what I am not doing is that I'm not using Photoshop to grab images from one place and combine it with another. I have no problem with that. I'm simply saying that the way I process my photographic works, like the ones that everyone that you've seen to this point, and the one that's on the exhibit there, are photographs, and then I use Photoshop, or I may use Lightroom in order to do the same thing that you would with film type photography, except that I'm using different tools. I'm adjusting the tonality,
Sure.
the contrast, those kinds of things, and cropping, of course. So it is digital in that to that extent. So I say all that to say that this is a compilation. This particular piece is a compilation of the raw images that I saw, and then I simply combine the images. You know, some people would call it a double exposure type of thing. So it's very, very similar to that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Okay.
But it is a transition, though. It is not even this compilation is not representative of the other, let's say, 25 pieces that I have existing. Those other pieces are standalones.
That was my next question. So you had 25 images of this particular series in this concept, and you're still developing that series then.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Now you asked the question earlier. Well, how did this? You know, what was actually behind this? What was the starting point for all this?
Yeah.
It actually began. This series actually began many years ago when I was at a rest stop, and I was getting back into the car, and
Where were you?
I was in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
In fact, I was on my way to New Jersey, and I was in Pennsylvania, stopped by a rest stop, got back in the car, and I just happened to be sitting there, you know, before I started the car up again, I happened to look down, and I was looking at this, you know, the lines that they have that demarcate the parking spaces, and looking at this particular demarcation, this white line, this broken white line, right, from years of cars driving over it, so it had a certain, I'm looking at the character of it. And I began to see it as a separate image, as an artistic piece, right? It had a utilitarian function, but I saw that, but then it began to transition from that. Well, you know, what does this look like as a piece of art if I wanted to make that, right? Would I be comfortable with what I'm seeing, and how could I compose it, or how would I present the textures that I'm looking at, right? Because I'm fascinated about textures in just about everything that I do. If I'm looking at a tree, I'm almost as interested in taking a close-up of the bark on the tree as I am of taking the entire tree. That's the way my head works.
Sure.
So I'm looking at this piece on the ground, this white line, and I actually took a photograph of it, and I'll talk about another piece that actually has that image embedded in it.
Okay.
And from that, I began to consciously look at the same environment, look at the pieces, the things that were underfoot that were kind of invisible to most people and visible all at the same time. It has a utilitarian function, but it's designed to be kind of out the corner of the eye, right? To pay attention, to give you guidance. And the more I looked at that, I began to look at other things that existed in that same environment. So that I'm beginning to look at the words that are written. I don't understand. This is construction engineers. They are writing languages and codes to themselves. But I began to look at it as though it was calligraphy to a large extent, right? Because calligraphy has its own kind of beauty about it. And I began to look at it that way. So I'm thinking about these graphical images that I'm seeing on the ground. I'm thinking about who are they designed to be presented to? Most of the people are not necessarily affected by that by design. When you walk out of your house today, or you look around, you've got all sorts of signs and images that are trying to get your attention. These images are to the contrary. They, by design, don't care whether you look at them or not, because they have a very specific targeted audience.
Right.
But when I looked at it, though, I'm looking at it, and still continue today, it has, I look at some of them and I think about the people that wrote them, right? I think about the uniqueness of handwriting, although these are done with spray can, I'm sure, to a large extent, right? But there's a uniqueness and a character that goes along with this. So I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about the fact that they're in the world, but they're not designed to grab your attention, but they have a very utilitarian function. We walk by them every single day. And I began to look at them more from a beauty aspect, right? Look at
how they present themselves to me, and is there any beauty associated with that?
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them are, but there are certain ones that I look at, right, that strike me, and I say, you know what, I see something there, and I can I can present that, I can develop, I can work with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that series, right, the ones that I have, that 25 that's in that series is a series of images that I've taken from that environment, right? And I tell you in the name of the piece itself exactly where that's coming from.
So then my question is this: so you're in Pennsylvania, you're at the rest stop, and you're having this sort of epiphany, and you're just running wild, and you're taking. So are all 25 of these images derived from that specific spot, or did you take that idea and then take it to other locations?
Yeah, it derived from that one spot.
Okay.
That one image, the capture and the exploration of that one image led me to every day uh, look for that. So
Noticing
whether
certain
I'm in,
things. Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really matter where I am. In fact, when I'm out in the world today, Rebecca, I'm looking for 'em.
Yep.
So if I see a construction site,
Yep. Now you
and
see it.
I can pull over,
Yep.
I'm gonna do it because
Yeah.
there's a good chance I may find something there that might strike me that I can work with. There are
Okay.
a lot of times I pull over and I see it and it doesn't do a thing for me, and
Sure.
I don't take it, right? I leave it, right? But if I see something though, I say, you know what, this looks like something that can really, I can do something with that, right? It says
So
something.
that's why it's an ongoing project.
That's why it's an ongoing project, right? It's going on, and I don't really particularly see an end to it, as long as I have an interest in exploring and seeing what comes out of it.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. I love having those moments where you see longevity too. An idea that has so much potential and the ability to expand and then grow. You can build on it too. So
Exactly.
I think
Exactly.
that's always exciting as an artist.
You it's got there's a real life,
I love
a
it.
real, and I just have great fun with it.
Yeah.
Just working on this project, so it's fantastic. I'm looking forward. At some point, I'll have the opportunity to present the entire series. So I'm looking forward to that. In the meantime, I just keep working.
All
In the
right.
meantime,
Yeah, I'm looking
so
forward to it too. So we've talked for a while now. I don't know where are we at with time.
wow, 7:30 now.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
only been about 30 minutes. We can keep going. And I know you have a lot of other images that you had sent me. Is there other work that you really want to bring attention to? Are there other, well, I'm going to back up a little bit. So you did tell me that, so you grew up in Newark. You at one point moved to the Chicago area. When did that happen?
Yeah, so I grew up in Newark, and in '75 left there, went to Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay. Okay.
To work. I mean, I was working. My background has been in transportation. Yeah, so my background has been in transportation, and so the work that I was doing day to day was relocated into Omaha, Nebraska,
Mhm.
and I went to Omaha, Nebraska, and from there came here to Aurora. That would have been '89, I think it was. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So that's really what forced that transition. So I've been doing the work all along, but yeah, but the business uh, was in a different field,
Well,
unrelated.
sorry, we're sitting in the gallery and one of the artists just walked in. That's why we had the
I,
hand
I,
gestures.
I got that. Sure. Yeah, yeah,
No, but I
yeah.
but I want to go back, and I heard transportation. So what role in transportation? Because I think this might actually play into your interest, with your photography too. I mean, it's what you see every day. So, like what did you do in transportation?
So it was a wide range of things within the field of trucking transportation.
Okay.
Uh, in the office, I've never driven an 18-wheeler, but I worked with people who were either owned those vehicles, drivers who were owner operators, as they say, or companies that owned the trucks that drivers ran. And the area that I worked in was the back office, what they call the operational side of the business, what some people would say dispatch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Operations, kind of generally speaking,
Mm-hmm.
sales, management of warehousing. So I worked the entire lots of aspects within the area of trucking transportation, mostly
Okay.
in the areas of operations to a large degree.
Okay.
So yeah, so when I wasn't doing that, I was into my art and photography, generating the work. Yeah, yeah. So,
Do you think that the field that you're in had had any sort of influence on your work? Because I mean, think about it, you're working with vehicles, you're dealing with roads, you're dealing with, I mean, I'm just kind of being general and throwing things out there, but I mean, I'm talking in particular about this last inspiration series that you have, where you're looking at lines in the road and you're looking at texture and you're seeing things in black and white, and it's also guidance. And I mean, I'm just trying, I'm maybe drawing parallels back to your career too. I don't know. I'm curious.
yeah, no, I see that. I can see where there might be an appearance of a parallel. I have to tell you that there isn't one that I've ever drawn in that regard.
No.
The environment that I worked in was you had to be pretty expressive. You had to interact with people,
Uh-huh.
and I suppose in that sense, maybe some psychological, because I practice that every single day.
Yeah, it's ingrained.
Open up and think about. I'm coming in contact with lots of different people. I mean, to your point, and that freedom can be kind of, it moves from one side of the brain to the other. That familiarity, right? That sort of openness that comes about. I
Right.
think the job itself, I mean, to your point, I hadn't really thought about it like that, but yeah, but there is an aspect of what I did every single day
Mm-hmm.
that that required a certain kind of mental attention from me. So, and I'm sure it did allow me to kind of continue to open up and express. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and my other question too, since the beginnings were living in Newark, where you're in a very urban environment, and the western suburbs of Chicago are not that. So how has your work changed? Because you live in Aurora, is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Aurora is a relatively larger suburb, but it's and we're not far from Chicago either. But certainly it's not the same type of feeling, the same type of environment as being in downtown Chicago or being in Newark either. So, how do you think that as you so uh, certainly don't want to feel like I'm dating you by any means, but it seems like you've been an artist, you've been a photographer, you've been doing this for quite a long time, and so you've had longevity
Yeah.
with your work, and you have a timeline, and have been inspired by different things as you've moved along that timeline. So now that you're in a suburb of Chicago, um, this inspiration that happened for the current project was in Pennsylvania, but do you feel like you have to travel? Do you feel like you have to go to specific places to continue with this project, or is there other work that is there other things that inspire you by living out more in a country type of atmosphere?
Well, let me share with you that my work, I've always described it um, as pretty eclectic. It's pretty diverse. So
Mm-hmm.
that if you look at the body of work that I have, like if you were on my website, for example, you'll see a wide range of imagery. Some of it you can define, others you can quite clearly.
Okay.
But to your point, I'm pretty much open to anything that grabs my attention, and I always have. So I don't see not living in a heavily urban environment today
Mm-hmm.
hasn't really restricted me at all.
Okay.
The ability to move and just try and stay open is really what I focus on. So I've got images. If I'm, that image that I took in Pennsylvania could have easily happened down at Walmart.
Sure.
Easily.
Sure. Sure. It's micro. It's not. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm really focused mostly, Rebecca, on just trying to stay open. I don't see that living uh, now in this point in time in a more less urban environment has distracted or necessarily even added to, because I've always although most of my early life was spent up in a heavily urban environment,
Mm-hmm.
I've always been open to just grabbing photos whether it's, like I said, of a tree or landscapes. I've always done it, and I still do it today. If I see something that strikes me that's even urban or texture, or if it's a landscape that I think is really interesting, or a group of trees or plants or a duck for that matter, I'll shoot it and try and do something with it. Not always successfully, but I will.
Wow.
I'll try. Yeah, the story.
Well, and the reason why I asked that is because, you know, as we sort of wrap things up, and you know, for people watching this, to, you know, for them to get a sense of the type of work that you do, what feeds your soul, what concepts you're interested in. But you know, people need to know that you are inspired by a lot of different things, and the fact that you've moved, you know, lived in various parts of the United States has impacted and has influenced the type of work that you do. So when they do go to your website, they know that they're going to see a lot of different types of stuff. And to me, I think that that's great. I'm also an eclectic artist. I don't think that I have one particular style. So, and I think that that's a positive thing, because I think yeah, because it can appeal to a lot of different types of of audiences. So
that's right. That's exactly right. There is one piece. There is another piece though that I like to. I know we're going to be closing up, but there is another one.
Yeah, for sure. I want to.
You know, people, we can kind of swing that one in, but
yeah,
let me show you. I'll give you the background on it. So
yes, okay.
So this is a
texture.
It's called 4/5 Human.
Okay.
4/5 Human. Now, we were talking earlier about that project and that stripe that gave me the inspiration.
Yeah.
That's really this image that you see here. That's where that came from. That is actually a photograph. That piece, right? But this is an image that is almost like a double exposure. There is another image behind it, and I don't know whether you can see that, but there is a you can see that where there's a face. There's a man standing here. You pretty much have a torso shot, right, sitting behind this. Maybe a little difficult to see on this page, but it's there.
Yeah. Okay. But you sent me that image, so I'll be able to put it up, and people can zoom in on it then.
It presents well on the screen once you put it up.
Okay, great.
So this piece, there was about.
Oh, I see it now. Actually, I see it. Yep.
Yeah, stand back. It's perfectly.
No, I see it. Yep, absolutely.
I call this piece again. It's 4/5 Human, and this piece grew out of a desire that I had about 7 months ago. And that I wanted to say something social, right? There's a lot of conversation that's going on today about race, right? And I was thinking about that,
right?
And I said, you know, I want to create something that talks about that, that addresses the issue of the race issue,
right?
But I wasn't quite sure how it is I wanted to present it,
right?
But then when I thought about the idea of race and invisibility on the one hand, and I thought about this other project that I'm working on, right? The invisibility of the images that you see projected on the street. I said, oh, there's my natural tie-in. So I created that because there's two elements here of invisibility, and I call it again the 4/5 Human.
Okay.
This was a recent piece that was created.
Wonderful.
So I did want to share that.
Yeah. And I can see this keep going too. This one has a lot of life as well.
Yeah, and it has. I want to talk about the name that I gave to it. 4/5 Human. I reference 4/5 in relationship to the designation that was given to African Americans as 3/5 for purposes of the slave owners being able to use the value of the property that they had for purposes of representation in the government, getting votes and that kind of thing. And they said, well, we'll give a designation of 3/5 human. I said, well, I'm going to call it 4/5 human, right? Because it represents a stage that I see where we're above the 3/5, not quite at the 5/5, right? So 4/5 human. So that's where the name comes from. And that's what I was trying to represent here. So it's I wanted to merge the social statement, and I wanted to do it in a way in which I present my art. And that's really where this piece came from.
Okay. So do you think that that is a standalone piece, or do you want to keep continuing with that concept and merging the two ideas? Because I think that there's a lot there to explore. I'm very excited to see what how you can build on that.
Yeah, I'm giving that some thought. I have to tell you, at this point, I haven't realized exactly right now. To answer your question, it is a standalone piece,
Mm-hmm.
but
Sure.
I thought
But
other,
you see
but
it,
but I thought about other ways though, in which I could explore that, right? And think about how to present that, and what is the, how does it work, and can I tell a story, right? Can I tell a story by combining these two aspects? So I am giving that some thought. So it's a good point that you bring up, and the answer is yes, I am thinking about it. Today it's standalone,
Yeah.
right? So
No, it's a very powerful piece, and absolutely it is. It holds up on its own beautifully. I'm excited as you're telling this because I want to see more.
well, thank you.
Well, I mean, we can. I think we've covered quite a bit, and I'm so happy that I got to know you better. I know we've seen each other in the gallery, in the when we were open for the opening or second Friday openings and all that stuff. But it's been really, really great to get to know you better and your artwork and have this conversation with you. And I hope that, we can continue to have these as well. And I hope that we can have another one when you have this amazing series that's going to be completed and maybe even fill this, entire gallery of your photographs.
Well, right now the series is. I mean, I'll share with you that the series is scheduled to be exhibited at Fermilab Art Gallery.
Okay, great.
November 11th through January 7th. Now, of course, that's going to be depending on what happens with the COVID, right? I mean, there's all that. We got that to deal with, and the Richard and Gina Santori Library in Aurora wants me to bring the exhibit there in the spring, in April. So
great.
So I'm continuing to work on it, but yeah, if it goes according to plan, the works will be up on exhibit here just prior to the winter of this year. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I'll continue to do the work on it. So
yeah. And if anything too, we have the online gallery at Water Street. So I think there's a couple pieces that you have for sale on that website. And then I believe Fermi's is doing a virtual tour, at least taking photographs of the work if you're not able to be in the gallery. I think that's how they're doing it. Yeah. So the last thing really is how to find you. You have a website. I know that. Are you on social media? Just any way that the viewers can find you and look more closely at your work.
Well, I welcome anyone to take a look at my website. It's at www.sladeimages.com.
Okay.
That's where my work is hosted and presented. So not on social media just yet, but it's certain. My website gives a very broad exploration of the kind of work that I've done.
Wonderful.
And continue to do. So So thank you again for the opportunity to share with you and the audience. And if there's another opportunity going forward, I'd be excited to participate as always.
Great. All right, Perry. Well, thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.
All right, Rebecca. Forward to it.
See ya.
All right. Bye.